Hey everybody, this is Darren Van Dam, and you are watching Flick Connection, the show that helps you get more out of movies. And today I want to tell you about my absolute favorite movies currently available on Hulu. So this is a top 10 list unlike anyone I've done before. These are my personal favorites. I'm not going with a specific genre. They're not necessarily hidden gems, but they're my favorite movies that are currently on Hulu, and I'm going to explain why as we go. Now, my first one on the list, the one all the way at the back, number 10, is somewhat of a hidden gem, and it's one of the happiest, most fun movies on this list, and one of the happiest, most fun movies I've talked about on this channel in quite a while. It hails from Ireland, and it's called Waking Ned Divine. This is about a small town in Ireland where a man wins the lottery and immediately drops dead. That's how the movie starts, and then what unfolds is all the townspeople trying to kind of build up this charade so that the town can collectively win this lottery on the back of this dead man. As grim as it sounds, it's not quite Weekend at Bernie's. It's got more heart to it, and it is really fun. It is somewhat family friendly. There's a little bit of old man nudity in it, but for older kids, this could be a fun one to watch with the family, and just a good little taste of like this little town in Ireland where all these really colorful characters kind of come to life. It's a really well-respected movie, a really well-reviewed movie. It won some awards years back when it came out, but I just find it to be a real gem of a watch. Now we're going to switch gears majorly with one of the sexiest movies of all time, and it's also the final film from one of the greatest filmmakers that has ever lived and probably will ever live, Stanley Kubrick. Some of you already know that is Eyes Wide Shut. Now, some people would consider this to be a masterpiece. I personally don't, but I do leave a little room there for the fact that Stanley Kubrick was such a precise genius in his filmmaking that film critics and people that analyze movies are still uncovering little things that he may have left inside all of his movies, one of them being Eyes Wide Shut, meaning this movie could be even better than we realize it is today. That said, it's a really intelligent movie that takes its time. It knows what it's about. You do have to sort of buy into the fact that this movie is about sexual obsession pretty early on in the movie, and then a lot more things make sense. Now there's a lot of subliminal things sort of hidden inside this movie. The colors of walls, symbols in the background, things like that. It's best to not get into all that stuff on your first watch or second. It's best to just really pay attention to the story because it comes around in this really cyclical way that's pretty brilliant. However, I do put it sort of towards the back of the pack in terms of Stanley Kubrick movies, but almost all of his movies are absolute works of genius, and they often find places on my list. I mean, one of the last ones I just posted had A Clockwork Orange pretty close to the top spot. Now, the writer of Lethal Weapon, one of the most famous buddy cop movies of all time, wrote and directed a buddy cop movie a few years ago that it was about a couple of guys that were neither buddies nor cops, and that movie is called The Nice Guys. Now, this one follows your typical buddy cop formula, except like I said, these are not cops. Ryan Gosling plays an alcoholic private investigator, and Russell Crowe basically starts the movie off as a guy who gets paid to beat people up. But they get sucked into this caper, and it's got sort of a classic detective movie type of a setup all the way through, but this movie is fun and funny at every single moment. There's not a scene that passes that doesn't have something clever that you don't expect. Now, for those of you that watch a lot of movies, you know most movies do not engage you that regularly with something clever that you don't expect. But in addition to that, The Nice Guys is built on the back of a pretty good story. It follows through really well. The story itself is clever. It's not life-changing or anything like that. In fact, it's pretty basic. It does feel a little bit familiar, but all the layers piled on top of it with these characters and all the little clever touches really elevate this beyond your typical detective movie. Now, my number 7 pick was number 1 on a recent Hulu list, but I had to include it here because I love this movie so much. It's called 13 Assassins. This is about a group of samurai that are hired to protect a village. Very similar setup to Seven Samurai, which is one of the most famous samurai movies ever made. In fact, they made multiple westerns based off of Seven Samurai, but 13 Assassins is way more intense. Now, I'm not gonna say it's a better movie than Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai, but it is incredibly entertaining and really, really wild. Now, this one does have plenty of scenes along the way to keep you interested and engaged, and it's a very interesting, beautiful movie, but it's all build up for sort of the final 30 minutes. The final 30 minutes of this movie are absolutely insane. And it's not like you're just waiting for that to happen. Everything else that happens before is what makes that 30 minutes so impactful and so heavy. But I'm telling you, this is a wild, bloody ride. If you don't have much experience with older samurai movies like Seven Samurai, fans of Kill Bill will enjoy this movie a lot. It's that type of movie. It's super macho in the best way possible. And just, not only is it fun, but it just feels so raw and real at times as well. It does have subtitles you are gonna have to read, but it's well worth it. There may be a dubbed version you could check out, but this is one that will blow your hair back. Now, the director behind my next pick is responsible for the new Dune remake or retelling, whatever you want to call it. He also did Blade Runner 2049 and Arrival, making him one of, if not the greatest sci-fi director this century, the 21st century, not the 20th century, for people who don't know how centuries work. But before all those, he did a dark thriller starring Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal called Prisoners. Now, this is a fairly well-known movie, but I think it's slightly underappreciated because it is just as brilliant as his sci-fi movies. It is a little over dark, making it hard to watch multiple times, but there are so many layers with this one that are not really buried like they are in like a Christopher Nolan movie or hell, like a Stanley Kubrick movie. They're fairly accessible, meaning you can understand a lot of the layers with the characters and the story in one watch with this one, and then uncover even more with the second watch. It is very heavy subject matter about a couple of girls that disappear, but you're also dealing with this detective played by Jake Gyllenhaal, who's got his demons. You're dealing with Hugh Jackman, who's definitely dealing with his. And you've got some other great performances in the mix. Terrence Howard and Viola Davis are parents of one of the girls, and while they do have some good scenes, they're more supporting roles here to sort of highlight the savagery of some of the other characters. Paul Dano's got a great role, Melissa Leo. This is just a stacked movie. If you're into darker thriller stuff and have never bothered to watch this, you're missing out majorly. It's one of the best ones to have come out in the last 10 years. So before moving on to my number 5 pick, I do need to tell you that Eyes Wide Shut, my number 5 pick, and my number 3 pick are all going to be leaving Hulu at the end of February. So on the 28th, they're going to be gone. So if that subscribe button below this video is still red, it means you're not subscribed. Click it, click the bell so you get notifications when I release videos like this. Then you can watch them when they release and not miss out on the movies in the future. Now, moving on to my number 5 pick. Many people consider Charles Bronson, myself included, to be one of the Hollywood's best macho men of all time. He's up there. But a lot of people would consider Death Wish to be his best movie, and while I do really like that movie, I'm personally a big fan of The Mechanic. In The Mechanic, he plays a hitman, a fixer, who takes people out by unconventional methods, making it look like accidents, heart attacks, things like that. So with this one, you get this great little sort of James Bond spy thing from the 70s that's a little funkier and in my opinion, cooler than a James Bond movie. It's darker, it's rated R, there's some heavier elements to it, but you still get this sort of like swanky spy hitman vibe off of it. In addition to that, the kills in this movie are clever and fun. I know that's a weird sentence to say that the kills are fun, but they really are. They're really interesting to watch. He's not just going around shooting people with a silencer. In addition to that, he takes on this protege, and there's just a great relationship and chemistry there. Charles Bronson, he's perfect in this role. I prefer him to this. You know, Death Wish is a great movie, but you got to deal with Jeff Goldblum raping Bronson's wife, and it's an ordeal to watch that. The Mechanic is just a good, fun 70s action movie that's not just mindless. It is smart, but it's not going to turn your brain into a pretzel either. Now we're getting into like favorite movies of all time. This one is the breakout hit. It's not the first feature, but the breakout hit from a director that is now considered one of the greatest auteur directors working today of all time. Paul Thomas Anderson, and that movie is Boogie Nights. Not only did this movie break him out, it broke out Mark Wahlberg, who is still making hit movies today. I think they're still hits. Some of them are misses. But Boogie Nights, if you've never watched it because you thought it was just about porn, you're missing out on a fantastic movie. This one, again, is just jam-packed with amazing characters. You've got Burt Reynolds, Heather Graham, Julianne Moore, Philip Seymour Hoffman, John C. Reilly, William H. Macy, Don Cheadle. I'm like running out of headspace. I'm running out of people. This movie is so good. Every single person plays such a good character. But kind of like my absolute favorite movie of all time, Goodfellas, this one has a similar structure where it's fun and wild, and Mark Wahlberg's character, whose name becomes Dirk Diggler halfway through the movie, gets swept up into this world of porn and coke and parties, and it looks like fun. He's buying Camaros and having sex with beautiful women, and it just looks like a ton of fun. And then, just like Goodfellas, things take a turn, and everyone sort of has to pay for all the shortcuts that they've taken in life, and it gets dark and heavy. There's so much going on in any given scene. It is a masterpiece of filmmaking. If you've never seen it, do yourself a favor and watch it soon, unless you're allergic to seeing peepees and wee-wees and boobs on the screen. Now, two of my top three just happen to be sci-fi movies, but this next one is one of the great lesser-known sci-fi movies of all time. It's from director Danny Boyle, who's famous for movies like Trainspotting, 28 Days Later, and Slumdog Millionaire, which he won an Academy Award for, and I think it's maybe his weakest movie, or at least one of them. But his great sci-fi masterpiece is called Sunshine. Now, this also features a really fantastic cast. It takes place in the future, obviously, but it is a crew on a space station headed towards the sun. I'm not going to explain why. The movie does a good job with all of that, but this movie looks beautiful because it looks so real at times. Obviously, Danny Boyle is taking inspiration from Stanley Kubrick in 2001: A Space Odyssey and some other movies, but it works here. It has its own flavor, its own unique look. There's a philosophy of the movie that sort of ties into the sun. It ultimately gets a little bit too wild for some people, but that's kind of what I like about it. At a certain point, kind of at the last quarter of the movie, the type of movie that it is changes into something else. And that doesn't work for some folks. It worked really well for me. I really enjoy this movie. I think it's beautiful. I think it's intense. It gets really intense at times, and it's just kind of unlike anything else other than the little glimmers that you get to see where Danny Boyle was inspired by some great sci-fi masterpieces. My number two pick is a Best Picture winner that baffled mostly people who hadn't seen it because they were confused as to how a little movie from South Korea called Parasite could have won Best Picture and not their favorite movie of the year, Joker.
I don't know what Parasite is. I don't give a shit about Parasite. It's fine. It won Best Foreign Film. You know why? Because it's a goddamn foreign film.
And while I do think Joker is a really fantastic, brilliant movie that is probably going to hold up and be appreciated for longer than Parasite, Parasite is a masterpiece of screenwriting. Now, the movie itself looks beautiful, it's full of good performances, all of that, but the clever way in which this is written and all the little touches that you can kind of uncover throughout. I've seen this movie 3 or 4 times, and it gets better every time because you notice all sorts of little subtleties that were written into the script that help elevate this story and give it this richness, not unlike anything that exists, but it's a richness that's extremely rare in filmmaking nowadays, and that's what makes Parasite so good. I know there's a few layers in this movie I've yet to uncover because I can detect them, they're right there and I haven't quite got them, but the ones that I have are really not just amazing. Some of them are funny, some of them are really clever, some of them are really dark. There's a lot of variety in this one, and most importantly, above all of that sort of hullabaloo I just talked about, this movie, if you've never seen it, surprises you at every turn. There's no expectations that you're gonna have from your history of watching movies that you can take into Parasite that is gonna help you. This is a new experience, and I loved it for that. Now, my number one pick is one of the greatest sci-fi movies ever made. And unlike some more recent sci-fi masterpieces, this one's sophistication is in its simplicity. And that is Blade Runner. More specifically, Blade Runner: The Final Cut. This movie is just a stunner. It's beautiful. Not only are there great performances and everything, but the vision of the future here is unlike anything else. I love the style of this one, but also, I mentioned its simplicity. It has complexities, but when you boil it down, this is a simple, just detective story. There's not a whole lot else to this one. Now, there's themes and things under the skin, but story-wise, you've got a very straightforward detective story, which allows you to explore the themes and take in just the beauty of this cyberpunk city. But when you consider the time period when Blade Runner came out, this is a marvel. Just as an example, the original Tron and Conan the Barbarian both came out the same year, 1982, and while those are still well-respected, loved movies today, they don't look nearly as good as Blade Runner. Blade Runner, when it's remastered, looks like it could have been filmed yesterday. It looks that good. It's an amazing movie. It's got some amazing moments in it. If you've never seen it, do yourself a favor and watch it soon. Like I said, some of these are gonna end up leaving Hulu sometime soon, but let me know in the comments below what you look forward to watching the most. Also, help me thank the Patreon supporters. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, there's a link in the description. There's also a link where you can become a channel member and get access to exclusive videos where I do reviews, extended reviews, things like that. There's already a bunch of videos that you can access the day that you sign up. Again, links to all of that in the description below, but I will keep making videos like this one as long as you keep watching them. Thanks for watching this Hulu episode, and you will see me on the next one.